Yesterday was the first day of the new Congress. John Boehner of Ohio sworn in as the new Speaker, and Republicans took control of the House yesterday. Congressman Thaddeus McCotter on the other end of our line, our Michigan congressman, joining us this morning here on the Frank Beckman Show. Good morning.
Good morning, Frank.
So give me some reflections on, did you feel the power shift your way yesterday?
Well, I think it was an appropriately subdued moment in the sense that everyone realizes the challenges the country faces. This wasn't, although I wasn't here for it, obviously, but the 1994 change after 40 years of Democratic control into a new Republican majority was a whole lot different than a 4-year interregnum between the Democratic majority and the Republicans taking control of the House. And I think that just the personality of John Boehner would not lead to a type of moment where there'd be overexuberance and we would miss the fact that the Republicans have not, by any stretch of the imagination, fully redeemed themselves in the eyes of the electorate, that we have a great challenge ahead of us with the trust that's been placed in us to control the House, and that we have to honor that and work at it day by day.
Now, there has been a lot of talk leading up to this moment where Speaker Boehner takes the gavel from Nancy Pelosi, that Republicans have an agenda, that they want to stop the growth of government, they want to stop government by bureaucratic dictate from the EPA or whatever other agency, FCC, you can imagine, that you want to repeal Obamacare and all of this. Is this really possible?
Well, I think the first thing that I always find fascinating, Frank, is how, not you obviously, but some quarters of the media talk about what Republicans want to do. The reality is we have to do what we were sent to do by the electorate. This isn't a case of somehow we magically popped up on the House floor with heads full of ideas that are driving us insane. What we did was we took a message to the American people, asked for them to entrust us with office. We had an agenda for not merely simply trying to reduce the size of government, but try to do much of what Governor Snyder is trying to do in Michigan, which is to reform it and make it relevant to the modern times and stop trying to keep a non-sustainable model of governance that we have in Washington any more than we can try to continue one in Lansing. So when we talk about it, we have to remember that Republicans were elected to do this, and that it's the American people that the Democrats are still having their argument with.
I'm guessing that you have seen by now the note from Gary Peters, the Democratic congressman from here in Michigan, your colleague from within the delegation, urging widespread bipartisanship. Is that possible?
Well, as long as you come at it from shared principles, and we were through this with the auto industry. So in Michigan, we have a perspective where it actually worked, where we represented our constituents, we represented our state, and we worked together to try to do something we all agreed on. And I think that when you can find common principles on which to move forward, that's one thing. But if you start talking about compromising for the sake of compromising, that's not what either side of the electorate wants or the independents want, because all you get essentially is political posturing out of it. And that's the only thing that's really capable. But if you actually have a meeting of the minds on principles where you can go forward, that's another matter entirely, and it's much more salubrious for the citizenry.
Well, how do you convince a liberal to compromise principles that are sort of concurrent with conservatism?
Well, you don't have to convince people who have deeply felt antithetical beliefs to yours. I think so what you should do is respect them and move forward. But there are a lot of, the Democratic Party is not a monolith any more than the Republican Party is a monolith. And what you can find is there are centrist Democrats, centrist Republicans, or slightly left of center, slightly right of center, however you want to look at it, that actually know that the government is not there to pursue a radical left agenda of having the government consider itself the salvation of sovereign citizens from themselves, and that understand that America's economy and its prosperity comes from the American people, that understand national security of the United States is something, one of our greatest, if not the greatest thing we are charged with when we take our oath of office. And I think that we can find that type of mutual accord on the principles. We can then find the comedy to actually enact policies. There's life, there's hope, Frank. We got to do it.
Well, always. Congressman McCotter, one of the biggest policy initiatives driven through by the Democrats in the previous session was Obamacare, obviously, and the Republican side has vowed to begin efforts to repeal Obamacare starting next week. Yesterday on the House floor, I want to play this very quickly, in her outgoing speech, handing the gavel to the new Speaker, John Boehner, the outgoing Speaker, Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi of California, made reference to health care and extolled its virtues.
It means that children with pre-existing conditions can can get care. Young people can stay on their parents' policy until they're 26. Pregnant women and breast and prostate cancer patients can no longer be thrown off their insurance. Our seniors are paying less for their medical prescriptions. Taken together, it will save taxpayers $1.3 trillion.
And you want to take all that good stuff away from us?
Well, again, what they did was, we're first, Frank, as you know, we can agree on goals, and it's a question of how we get there. The health care bill, as the American public has decided, is not something that they want. They did not have a majority of the consent of the government for it, and the public wants us to start over and find better ways to accomplish those goals without having to foist a whole new massive government bureaucracy on them, without having a bill that starts from the flawed premise that somehow government can control supply to reduce the cost of something. That is not what happens. So I think that the American people, as I said earlier, the speaker's continuing to have an argument with the American people who've already made their mind up. They know what they want, they know what they don't want, they want us to go back and do it the right way.
Well, the difficulty, though, from a practical standpoint, while you've got the majority in the House now and may be able to pass legislation that would lead to the repeal of Obamacare, you still have a Senate that's controlled by Democrats who are considering rules that would eliminate the filibuster as a tool of the minority opposition in the Senate. You have a president who has already vowed that he will veto any effort to repeal Obamacare. How do you win that battle practically?
Well, you're talking about only within the time frame of the 2 years. It's a major piece of legislation, which is why they put so much at risk to pass it. They knew that when it was enacted, it would be difficult in the short run to try to repeal it en masse. And so what you have to do is you have to look at this as a journey of 1,000 miles starting with steps. And you have to continue to work in the interest of the public to do what you promised to do and get there. And just try to work as best you can, as quickly as you can, to rectify this situation. But as I think you rightly point out, Frank, one of the things that has to be remembered is that the Republican Party was elected to have the control of the United States House, not of the Congress, and certainly not of the executive branch. So anything that gets accomplished is going to be in many ways despite the Senate and despite the president.
How concerned are you about the president's efforts to bypass Congress through his various agencies, the FCC, where the Internet is concerned, the EPA, where cap and tax is concerned? This seems to be a growing trend, and these bureaucrats are making decisions despite court rulings telling them they shouldn't do so.
Well, I think that's something that Republicans learned, or at least I hope that the vast majority of us learned, is that this is not simply a development that has occurred with President Obama. And I think that the Republicans, when we had control, forgot that we're a separate equal branch of government with oversight over the executive branch, over the bureaucracy, regardless of what party the president comes from. And I think that one of the things that we might be able to find common ground on with our Democratic colleagues is to remind them that while we may differ within our separate equal legislative branch of government, we all agree on the fact that we have to conduct oversight over an executive regardless of party. And right now the party in control is the Democrats. It might be a little difficult. But if we've learned our lesson, the sooner that they learn theirs, that we have a job we have to do regardless of partisanship, I think things will start to get more back into balance.
Well, it's interesting. All the calls for compromise have come from the other side, and I still recall in the last Congress that there were calls for compromise from your side that were largely ignored, weren't they?
Well,
why should you compromise? Why should you be the only people to compromise?
I know it's one of the, when you take the long view of things. I saw a headline out here, Frank, in one of the Hill papers, and it said new majority promises to stop business as usual. And I said to myself, well, why don't you run a headline someday when the new incoming majority says, yeah, we're going to do what they did. It's just not going to happen. There's certain things that happen within the American tradition of politics. And so that the party that's in the minority is going to say that they want to work with you, and it's up to the majority to work with you. But as a practical matter, again, because of who controls which chambers and who controls the executive branch, there will have to be a lot of actual engagement between the two parties, because it's not simply a case of one being in a distinct minority and shut out of the House and Senate and the presidency the way we were for 2 years.
Do you believe your party's in power because of the Tea Party movement?
Well, I think our party's in power because, in
the House,
the majority in the House.
In the House.
Is all powers delegated from the sovereign citizens. So I think that the citizenry, not just Tea Party members, but others, agreed, largely a lot of independents, too, agreed with the goals that were put forward by the Republican Party, and many of them were expressed by the Tea Party. Now, I think a lot of the energy that helped breathe life back into the Republican Party to get it going again after the last 4 years was from the Tea Party. But as we've talked about before, there's no one single Tea Party. The Tea Party is an organic grassroots development that varies from state to state in terms of intensity and in terms of many of the issues that they find of salience. And so a Michigan person in the Tea Party, you can go to a Tea Party and find union members. You can go to a Tea Party and you can find people who have taken time off their jobs to show up, or you can find a whole multitude of people with varying different political perspectives, but that agree on fundamentals.
I ask that because there's always this view of who these people are, and I view them as my neighbors. You know, they're the people that I live with. That's all. They're simply American citizens. But Steny Hoyer, the House Minority Leader, came up with a different insight. He looks at them, and I just find this so interesting. He says, "My presumption is they have unhappy families. All of you have been in families, single parent, two parents, whatever, multiple parent, and a stepfather, and he sees these broken families as producing these people." And
yeah, we saw that, and you know, as you remember, during the Iraq summer, which was the anti-war movement, which was centered largely out of Washington. But what you saw with that, Frank, was people come to the office, and my response would be to Republicans or conservatives, well, you know, well, how does this make you feel? I say, well, it's their God-given right to petition their government for redress of grievances.
Sure.
And so I wish that they would take that approach with the people who participate in the Tea Party. But the problem that they have, and we've talked about this before, is from the left wing's view, their narrative of history is conservatives do not take to the streets to protest their government's actions to fight for the redress of grievances. They just do not do that. It's the bastion of the left. Only they get to do that. And so what they've done is they don't know how to deal with this reality. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to smear it. They're trying to paint it as something it's not. They're trying to psychoanalyze it. And I would caution any politician to try to psychoanalyze somebody else.
Well, finally, I've kept you way too long. I apologize for that, Congressman McCotter, because as you go into session this morning, I understand that the new 112th Congress will begin with a reading of the Constitution on the House floor, a move that is being ridiculed on the left. I want to play for you one more clip this morning before you go away. This was from the legendary show of Joy Behar talking with another left-leaning talk show host, Bill Press from NPR, about the Constitution and reading it. Listen in.
Do you think this Constitution loving is getting out of hand? I mean, is it a nod to the Tea Party? What is this about exactly? That he's,
is it
the first time a lot of congressmen will have heard about it, read it?
I was going to say, first of all, I think on the one hand, it's hooray for Hollywood, right? I mean, I really think it's just a so obvious publicity stunt. But I got to tell you, there could be some benefit here, because I think most Republicans haven't read the Constitution, to be honest. I hope they listen carefully. There's some good stuff in there about the right of privacy they probably never heard before. There's something in there that says only Congress can declare war, not a president of the United States. I bet they never heard of that before.
Probably never did.
This could.
You had me scurrying, Joy Behar, to my Constitution. I can't find the words right to privacy in there. I don't know where they're hiding it on me, Congressman McCotter. And we know that only Congress can declare war, not a president, and that's never changed. And that's what happened the last time in Iraq, too.
Well, I think he's talking about the War Powers Act, too. The courts have ruled on that. But what you're getting, Frank, is without realizing it, is that they're showing how little regard they have for what is the supreme law of the land. The left is the ones who like to run to the court to have it unilaterally interpreted, to put their own visions and views into the Constitution, despite the fact that they're going around the amendment process because they can't get the people to support it. So what you're really seeing is the fact that I think it's problematical, because the more the Constitution is read and understood, the more people are just coming around to the point of, well, how did this get interpreted this way? Who put this in there when the people didn't? What I think that a lot of conservatives have to remember, too, is that this is supposed to be a remedial reading. It's a respectful way of saying this is the sovereign law of the land. But this is something I would think that every American student should read, every American citizen should read, everybody should be acquainted with, and then you can at least have the shared basis for your differing interpretations of it. And as you know, Frank, we raise our right hand to God and we swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It doesn't hurt to have it read to us after we've done that.
Can you even imagine, though, an American saying, do you think this Constitution loving is getting out of hand about our founding document? That it's, I mean, that is just so off the wall to me. I can't even process it.
Well, I think they also have to remember, Frank, is that document is the supreme law of the land. But it was created by the most sovereign entity in the country, which is the people. And it was established to set up government as a servant to guarantee and secure your rights, not to try to guarantee equality or not to grant you your rights. So the more that the Constitution is emphasized, the more people understand how that document came into being, how it brings in all the traditions of Western civilization, the restoration of the founders' rights as Englishmen and so forth, the more the left has difficulty explaining what they want to do with it and certainly how they're trying to do it.
Thanks for letting me dominate your time this morning. It's always good to have you on the show. Take care.
Bye.